The internet is a vast digital ocean, but some files, buried deep in its forgotten corners, are more like digital landmines. You click on them, and you might unleash something you can never put back. We're told they're just stories, urban legends for the digital age, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Our first file is known only as the sitter.avi. It surfaced in 2008 on a second-hand hard drive purchased from a flea market in rural Ohio. The buyer, a college student named Alex, was just looking for cheap storage. He plugged it in, the drive whirring to life with a painful-sounding click and groan, like a ghost awakening. Most of the drive was wiped, but one folder remained. Home vid. Inside, a single 72-megabyte file. The sitter.avi. The date stamp was corrupted, showing only a string of nonsensical characters. This is the point of no return. The moment curiosity outweighs caution. We've all been there. Alex double-clicked. Windows Media Player opened, then immediately crashed. He tried again. This time, it played. The quality was terrible, a mess of digital artifacts and washed-out color from an old camcorder. It showed a teenage girl in what looked like a 90s living room, talking to a child who was just off camera. She was smiling, trying to coax the child to go to bed. The audio was a distorted soup of hiss and muffled voices. Then, at the 47-second mark, she stops. Her smile fades. She slowly turns her head to look towards a dark hallway behind her. The video freezes on her terrified face, then cuts to black. The file was only 48 seconds long. A corrupted file. A tragic, but ultimately explainable fragment. That should have been the end of it. But Alex was unsettled. He couldn't shake the look in her eyes. Later that night, he opened the file again. The video played. He watched the girl smile, talk to the child. But something was different. This time, the hallway door behind the sitter, which had been closed before, was slightly ajar. A sliver of perfect, impenetrable blackness was visible in the gap. He panicked. He thought he was losing his mind. He scrubbed back and forth, but the door remained open. It wasn't a different file. The metadata was identical. The file itself had changed. Digital files aren't supposed to be quantum. They don't change just by being observed, unless they're not just files. Over the next week, Alex's obsession grew. Each time he watched, another detail was altered. The picture frame on the wall was now tilted. A toy on the floor had moved closer to the hallway. Then he started analyzing the audio. He isolated the hiss and ran it through filters. Buried deep beneath the noise, he found it. A whisper. A single repeating phrase in a dry, rasping voice. It was saying, "I see you," not "I see her." "I see you." The file was aware of its audience. The barrier between observer and observed was breaking down. The horror was no longer confined to the screen. That's when he started seeing things. A tall, slender shadow in his peripheral vision. A flicker of movement in the dark hallway of his own apartment. The feeling of being watched never left. One morning, he came to his computer and found the file had renamed itself. It was now alex.avi. He refused to open it. He unplugged the computer and hid the hard drive. The last known evidence of Alex comes from his roommate. He found Alex's room empty, the laptop open. The webcam was on, recording. The footage showed Alex's empty chair, his back to the camera, staring intently at a black screen for hours. And in the final few frames, just before the battery died, a tall, slender figure made of what looks like video static slowly emerges from the shadows behind the chair and places its hands on his shoulders. Our next file is more subtle. It doesn't show you horror. It makes you part of it. It's called Lamina.dat. Lamina.dat was a legend on old cryptography and esoteric programming forums in the early 2000s. A ghost in the machine. A file that supposedly contained a perceptual parasite. The story follows Chloe, a cybersecurity analyst. A skeptic by trade, she found a post with a link to a file on an archived forum. The original poster claimed it had ruined his life. Intrigued, she downloaded it. She ran it in a fully isolated, sandboxed virtual machine. A command prompt window flashed open for a nanosecond, then disappeared. Nothing. No processes, no new files, no network activity. It seemed to do absolutely nothing. The perfect Trojan horse. It doesn't attack the system. It attacks the user's trust in their own senses. The first oddity happened the next day. While on a video call, she noticed her reflection in the dark screen of her second monitor. When she moved her head to the left, her reflection moved to the right. A simple mirror image. But then she stopped moving, and for a split second, her reflection continued to turn its head, its face almost looking directly back at her before snapping back into place. She blinked, shaking her head, dismissing it as a trick of the light. Then came the text messages. She'd read an email, then glance away. When she looked back, a single word would be different. Meeting at 9 became morning at 9. Can you check this? Became, can you hear this? It's designed to make you question your sanity. If you can't trust what you read on your own screen, what can you trust? The parasite was spreading. It was no longer confined to the virtual machine. It was in her phone, her tablet, her work PC. Any screen she looked at was now a potential window for it. She started seeing figures in the visual noise of low-resolution videos, in the static between TV channels. Thin, paper-like entities that seemed to scuttle and fold in on themselves at the edge of the frame. She tried to find the original file, to delete it, but it was gone. Yet the effects remained, growing stronger. She was living in a digital haunted house, and there was no escape because the ghosts were everywhere. The file was just the delivery system. The payload was now in her mind. The code had been executed on her wetware. The breaking point came late one night. Her laptop webcam activated on its own. It showed her empty bedroom. But the feed was not clean. It was layered. She was looking at her room, but she could also see something else. A thin, translucent figure, like a sheet of photographic film, was clinging to her ceiling. It slowly, deliberately, unfolded one of its long, spindly limbs. Chloe smashed the laptop shut, but she could still see it. She could see the thing in the reflection of her darkened window. It was in the glass. It was in every reflective surface. It was always there, just one layer of reality away. Her last post on the same forum was a garbled mess of panicked keyboard smashing. But in the middle of the gibberish, a single clear sentence. It lives in the glass. Our final file is different. It doesn't attack your sight. It attacks your hearing. An audio file known as The Siren's Call to MP3. The story comes from Ben, a freelance audio engineer. He received the file from a frantic client who claimed it was haunting him. The client begged Ben to analyze it, to find out what was wrong with it, but warned him under no circumstances to listen to it himself. Ben was a professional. He wasn't superstitious. He loaded the 3-minute file into his audio editing suite. The first thing he noticed was the waveform. It was wrong. It didn't look organic. It looked engineered, designed. Against his better judgment, his curiosity piqued. He put on his most expensive, noise-canceling headphones and pressed play. He set the volume low. Legends about files like this suggest some sounds were never meant for human ears. The theory is they operate on frequencies that might bypass logic and speak directly to the primitive parts of the brain. At first, all he heard was a deep, sub-bass hum, a low thrumming that he felt more in his chest than heard with his ears. It was unsettling, but not terrifying. Then, underneath it, another sound began to emerge. It was a melody, not quite musical, a a series of discordant yet somehow alluring tones. It seemed to slide between the notes, creating a sound that felt mathematically impossible, profoundly alien. After 30 seconds, a wave of intense vertigo and nausea hit him. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. He ripped the headphones off, his ears ringing with a deafening silence. The melody, however, was still there, echoing inside his skull. You can delete a file, but once a sound is imprinted in your memory, in your auditory cortex, how do you get it out? He couldn't shake it. Over the next few days, he began to hear the melody everywhere. In the low hum of his refrigerator, in the sound of the wind against his window, in the static from an untuned radio. His own home, his sanctuary of sound, became a torture chamber. Every noise was a potential trigger, twisting itself into that same impossible tune. He felt like he was being called by something, drawn towards an unknown destination. Driven by a mix of fear and professional obsession, he went back to the file, not to listen, but to analyze. He ran a spectral analysis, breaking the sound down into its core frequencies. The file doesn't just play a sound. It seems to reprogram the brain, forcing it to seek out that same pattern in the chaos of everyday noise. His analysis led him to a disturbing hypothesis. He found what he believed to be a complex layer of infrasound and ultrasound, frequencies outside the normal range of human hearing. The data suggested these specific frequencies could potentially cause minute vibrations in the bones of the inner ear, inducing psychological and perceptual distortions. The last piece of data we have from Ben is an audio log he recorded on his phone. His voice is a strained whisper. He talks about the melody being louder now. He says the geometry of his studio looks wrong. His final words are chilling. It's not just a sound. It's a map. It's showing the way. The walls are thin here. I have to go to the source. The recording ends with the sound of his studio door opening and closing. We're now looking at video recovered from Ben's phone. It's shaky, first-person footage. He's moving down a corridor in his apartment building, but the perspective is wrong. Walls seem to bend, corners are too sharp, and the floor appears to slope away at an impossible angle. The melody is no longer faint. It's a deafening, layered symphony of dissonance. Ben's breathing is ragged. It's not a building anymore, he rasps. It's a pathway. The phone camera pans up. At the end of the warped corridor is not a door, but a shimmering, unstable fissure in the very fabric of the wall. It looks like a glitch in reality, pulsing in time with the horrible melody. Inside the fissure, impossible shapes and alien colors churn. The sound is a physical force now, vibrating the phone in his hand. Ben whispers, his voice filled with a terrible awe. The source. It's so beautiful. Ben takes a final, determined step. He reaches a trembling hand towards the anomaly. The melody swells to a piercing, unbearable crescendo as his fingers make contact with the shimmering surface. The camera feed explodes in a blinding flash of static and kaleidoscopic light. We hear a sharp, digital severing sound as the phone clatters to the floor, its lens pointing back down the now empty and suddenly silent corridor. For several seconds, there is only the image of the floor and profound silence. Then a low digital hum begins. Slowly, quietly, the first few notes of the melody start to emerge. Not from the corridor, but from the phone's own speaker. The video file is corrupted, but the audio is now embedded in the device itself. It has found a new host,